Welcome to Parenthood Bites, the podcast where we explore life as a parent in tech. I'm your host, Chow, and I have over 15 years of experience in tech, and I'm also currently working as a career coach. I'm the proud mother of 3 incredible boys. In each episode, we have an inspiring guest who will share their remarkable story. You'll find their wisdom and insights both relatable and enriching, because after all, we're all in this parenting journey together. So grab your favorite drink, get cozy, and let's dive into today's episode. Hi everyone, welcome to episode 58 of Parenthood Bites. We're here with Hannah Morgan, who's a working mom, a project manager in the fintech space, and the founder of Heron House Management, a virtual house management service designed to lighten the mental load for busy parents. She's passionate about helping families reclaim their time and energy so they can fully enjoy life's beautiful, chaotic moments without feeling buried under endless tasks. Hi Hannah, how are you today?
I'm great. So happy to be here and chat with you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have you on the podcast. And I know you have your own podcast too, right? As part of your house management business?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we serve busy working parents. And so we thought, what better way to do that as a weekly podcast that we drop, 5 to 10 minute episodes. And it's just helpful tips from experts with ways to create systems at home that minimize stress. So we talk about work-life balance, we talk about meal planning, we talk about whatever we think would be helpful to our listeners. And I love the length particularly because I'm like, I want to have something that I can just pop in really quick right after I drop my kids off from school. It's like 10-minute drive home, something I can listen to while I'm making dinner or whatever. Of course, I listen to your podcast as well. I have to listen to it in pieces. De-Stress the Nest is really fun, and I'm looking forward to having you on as a guest as well.
Yeah, awesome. I'm super excited to be on your podcast as well. And I love the concept where it's like little bite-sized bits that are like easily digestible. You know, I was listening to it when I was just driving to pick up my kids or something. And I was like, oh, I just picked up a tip and just going to pick up my kids. So how did you come up with the concept of, I think you have one guest for 3 episodes and then they talk about one tip per episode. How did you come up with that? That's really neat.
I love podcasts and I love the format. I think it's so fun to be able to step into a conversation that people are having. And I realized that as working parents, we have so many things happening. We are working our day jobs and then we also are working our third shift, right, of managing the home. And that goes for parents of all genders, of course. There's just a lot of moving parts to manage. And so what I hear from a lot of our clients is they feel overwhelmed, which is one of the reasons they come to work with us in the first place to help, work on their to-do list and manage their mental load. And so I thought, okay, what about some bite-sized ways that we could share value with people? And I personally learned a lot from the podcast, from every guest that I've had on. We've had some really great conversations that have been really enlightening. And I love that it just gives you a different perspective. Kind of like when you talk with people on your podcast, you get to step into someone else's shoes, hear their story. And those stories are what inform us and they help shape us as people, as parents. And so I love being able to share through that medium.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, that's one of the things I love about my podcast is that I get to learn from so many people. Like every person I talk to, I'm like, oh my gosh, I just learned a bunch of useful things.
Yeah.
So that's really, really neat. And can you talk a little bit about your business as well? Like, how do you help parents with the mental load? What kinds of things do you do for them?
Oh man, I love this question because everybody's requests are so different. So when I started the business, it's because I was, I had my first kid and I realized I was just so busy as a project manager working in the fintech space. And I'm really good at creating systems. I'm very much oriented towards that. But I realized I just didn't want to be on hold trying to track down my kid's birth certificate 5 days in a row because I had other things going on. And then at the end of the workday, it's like the last thing you want to deal with is this never ending to-do list of parenting and being an adult, all the paperwork, all the administration that comes along with that. And then on top of that, there's all the planning. I don't know if you've ever had this conversation with your partner where you say, okay, what are we going to get, our parents for Christmas this year? And they're like, why are you asking me that? It's 3 weeks away. I'm like, because we got to do it now before the day
Before you know
before.
it, it's the next day.
Yeah, so I started kind of adding things up and I realized, wait a second, there's a ton of mental lift here that comes along with the administrative aspect of being a parent, running a household. And so I started looking around for a solution. And what I found is that there's a lot of personal assistants out there. And what I didn't want was somebody who would do what I told them to do. I wanted somebody I didn't have to delegate to. I wanted somebody that was always going to be 2 steps ahead of me anticipating needs, asking me the questions. Okay, how are you spending your weekend? What's the source of stress right now? What are you going to do for the holidays? What are we doing for Thanksgiving? Okay, you're going to go visit somebody. Let's book flights. Let's get a hotel. What are we going to bring to dinner? Do we have tablecloths for hosting? All those kinds of questions that can elicit that sort of project planning that we offer for our clients, and then also support with the execution. So I found that there was a huge need. I talked to about 100 working parents before I started the business. I found there's a huge need, huge demand, and that there wasn't really another service that was out there designed specifically for relieving mental load in the way that we wanted to. So when I founded the business last year in fall 2023, we got a really positive response, and it's just been an amazing experience being able to work with our clients and really provide thought partnership with them as well as execution. And so we like to position ourselves as project managers for your personal life. And that's so different from being a virtual assistant or somebody that is performing tasks that you're delegating. Because a lot of our clients come to us and they say, I tried working with a personal assistant, but I don't have the headspace to delegate, and I don't have the time to tell someone what to do or to spot check their work or whatever it may be. So we work with our clients in a very specific way. We meet with them regularly, typically once a week, sometimes less frequently. And we offer subscriptions. You can work with us 5, 10, or 15 hours a month. We meet with you regularly to talk through that to-do list, do that planning and that anticipating. And then as a team, we've created these systems where we have, a checklist for everything you could possibly need to do to prepare for any holiday your family may celebrate. And we walk our clients through it. We have a checklist for everything organized by month that you as a homeowner need to consider, from cleaning your chimney to servicing your HVAC system to getting a landscaper lined up, like whatever it may be. And then we work with you to customize that around what your needs are. And then we ultimately do the delegation. And what I love about it is it sounds like we're driving just in those channels. But what I love about it is our clients come to us, and 9 times out of 10, they'll say, okay, so I get that you guys do meal planning and travel booking and holiday planning, but what I really need help with is this super random weird request, and there's no way you can help me with it. And every single time we're able to say yes.
You're like, challenge accepted.
I love it. Exactly. I love it. Challenge accepted. People come to us with the most off the ball requests, and like there's literally never been one that we can't handle. And so I really love that. So to help our clients envision what might be helpful to them, we have a very long list of things, of maybe 60 or 80 projects and tasks that we can offer support on our website. And we just think of that as a jumping off point. And we say, take a look and see if this sparks anything. But, usually our clients come to us with something really specific, and then it just grows from there as we figure out how we can support them to relieve their mental load, minimize stress, and create systems at home. So yeah, I love the wild requests because it keeps it interesting.
Yeah, that's really amazing. As you were talking, I was thinking I just published an episode today on like parenting hacks, just things that I've gathered over the years and I've talked to people about. And I feel like this is something to add on that list,
Totally.
using your service, because there are so many, there's a lot of invisible and visible mental loads that we take on. And a lot of times it's like it either gets dropped or you do it last minute. I know for me, it's like, oh, Christmas is coming up. Great. And then it's like, I'll do it. And then before you know it, you're on Amazon Prime looking for 2-day shipping because
You didn't do it.
Christmas is coming up. Yeah. Yeah. And so to have someone that can help you with that and just, hey, here are your options, or, this is what I've gotten for you, would just help so much.
Absolutely. And we've built these tools to help our clients, like, Christmas being a great example. We built this proprietary system for tracking all of the gifts that you get people throughout the year. And so that way you can literally copy paste, and next year you have everybody's address. You can change the list of people that you're going to give. Maybe they're not your client anymore. You have a different colleague. You can kind of swap things out. But you can also track how much money you want to spend. So I'm a big personal finance nerd, a big budgeter. My first podcast was a personal finance podcast. And so I'm like, this is how much I want to spend on gifts for the year. And then it auto tallies. And so I can make sure I'm staying in budget. And then I can just copy paste the next year, and I know, who I'm going to send gifts to, what I got them last year so I don't get them the same thing. Stuff like that we are now actually selling those spreadsheets and those tools that we've created. We're selling them to our non-clients because we found they're so helpful to our clients and to our team that we wanted to be able to share that with others in a more cost-sensitive way. So we have those available for download on Etsy, which is really fun. But we also make it available for all of our clients. And just, little things like that, creating those systems, it reduces so much stress knowing, okay, it's going to get done. I don't have to be the only one doing it. The pieces of it, like, for our Christmas card this year, I'm working with my husband and my house manager. The project is Christmas card. There's like 8 different things that need to happen. And in a previous world, I would have been the one to say, hey, should we do a Christmas card? And then I would do all the 8 things. And that's exactly what happened until I started this business and brought a virtual house manager into our, systems. with my personal life. And so she has things she's responsible for, and he has things he's responsible for, and I have things I'm responsible for. And so by being able to peel out all the pieces of the mental load, we're also bringing value to that. And that's one of the challenges, like you said, about invisible labor. One of the challenges about invisible labor is that it's not valued. And so when you put a dollar sign next to the value of that work, you assembling a Christmas list is going to take you 2 hours, right? Well, if you paid somebody to do that, then maybe your partner or other people in your life would see that as legitimate work. And so by bringing a market value, we're lifting that up and we're saying this is not something that can just be presumed to be one person, and it's often women's work. It's something that is fair game for everybody to do. And if nobody's going to do it, then we'll pay somebody to do it.
Absolutely. And I love the idea of treating it as a project, because
Mm-hmm.
at work, that's how we get projects done, right? You have different projects. So I love having that and setting milestones and things like that.
Absolutely.
So I like to start with, how many kids do you have and what are their ages?
Yeah, so I just had my third baby. So I have a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 6-month-old.
Wow. You have your hands full. That's
Yes,
cute
yeah.
ages, though.
They're such cute ages, exactly. I love the baby toddler years. I mean, I don't know anything different, but I love these years. They're so fun and they're snuggly and silly and a lot of fun to be around. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, and they're pretty close in age. So it's like when they grow out of the toys, then you can give all the toys away at once.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
So what brought you to a career in tech?
So I actually spent my 20s working in nonprofits, and I was a community organizer for environmental and social justice nonprofits. So I started out working with communities that were directly impacted by mountaintop removal coal mining in southern Appalachia. And so I was, embedded in these communities, working with people that were finding their voice to speak out against the mono industry of coal that had been there dominating the economy for 100 years. And so to be able to challenge a system like that is a really amazing and empowering experience when you do it right and you do it collectively. And so I cut my teeth doing that, and I saw the impact that that kind of work could have. I ended up working for a couple other environmental nonprofits and then ultimately in the solar industry. And I had what, a friend of mine called a milestone birthday. When I was reaching 30, I was like, is this really what I want to be doing for the rest of my life? Or is there another way that we could be attacking these problems of inequity and environmental injustice? And so I decided to go back to school and get my MBA, and I wanted to work in the private sector because I specifically thought, what if there was a way that we could put a dollar value on some of these systemic changes that we could do to challenge these systems of oppression? And I think I'm doing that to some degree in my business now. I'd like to think so, by elevating this invisible load and equalizing the responsibility of work at home. I think that's part of the larger conversation about systems of oppression being perpetuated by unsaid cultural norms. So yeah, it was really a shift for me, deciding that I wanted to step into another phase of my life and attack similar problems from a different perspective. So I was fortunate enough to be invited to join a team that I had worked with previously. They were building websites for nonprofit clients. And so it was a really easy step for me into the private sector. So I started working there. And then I was doing fractional work with them while I finished up my MBA. When I finished my program, I just kept accruing other clients who also needed fractional project management support. And so that was 2018. And by 2021, I realized, wait, I think there's a broader need for this. So I actually launched a project management agency in 2021, which is still going on today. And we offer fractional project management support to growing teams that don't need somebody full time. They just need somebody part-time, fractionally, ad hoc, per project basis, whatever it may be. And so that's been a really fun foray into the tech industry. We work with clients in tech, startups, digital marketing, real estate, and the arts. So that's been a fun, side quest that's been going on for a couple of years. And then, I work as a project manager in the fintech space. And so I have exposure to a lot of different companies building solutions for their clients in the finance space. And that's been really educating for me. I've learned a lot through those years, seeing what kind of solutions people are building. That's been a fun journey.
That's so neat. So right now, is that your project manager work, is that through your agency as well?
Yeah, so I do have the agency, and then I also have another setup. So I work for a consulting company as well.
Oh, that's really cool. So how many years were you working in tech when you became a parent?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think maybe a year or two. It wasn't that long. I'm trying to think because my first child was born in COVID, so it was April 2020. So that whole era was kind of a blur. But I think maybe like a year, 2 years, I guess 2 years I've been working in tech.
That's really interesting. So your first baby was during COVID. So you have that experience of like having a baby during really major lockdown and then kind of loosened up and then now, right? Can
Yeah,
you tell me a little
yeah.
bit about like the difference of your experiences there?
Oh my gosh, it's so wild. So I had two babies on either side of the extreme of the pandemic. So the first one was born like 6 weeks after the lockdown started. And then the second one was born like 2 weeks after the vaccine became publicly available. So it was a very different experience. But then with my third, I live in Florida now, and being able to be outside has just changed the game. So we're outside all the time. And so it's been really nice to have that kind of change in lifestyle. I would say I just didn't really realize how hard it was because it was my first baby. So, like the isolation, the not having access to a village, like it really whipped me into shape. I didn't realize that it could have been easier. And so I think that that was part of why we were able to have a third kid, because we were like, well, we did it before without help. Like, let's just keep going. So it was an interesting experience. And I know for you, like your kids were a little older, so they were more aware and they were more involved in that process. And so I think that comes with a whole different set of challenges. For me, it was more just like, how do I keep my baby alive with this huge uncertainty of the pandemic? And I was fortunate enough to have always been a remote worker. And so there wasn't a huge disruption. But it did mean that my husband actually ended up leaving his job and staying home to raise our baby the first year because it was impossible to get childcare that was COVID safe. So that was a huge step that he made and something I'm really grateful to him for doing. And he's since gone back to work. But yeah, you just have to be resilient and have to be scrappy in times like that. And so I think it really shaped who we are as parents. But we didn't really realize it until we had the third baby. And we're like, wow, I can take this baby anywhere. We can do anything. Play dates, grocery store, whatever, daycare. It's all open now. And it just is very different.
Yeah, like you said, when that's your first one, you don't really have something else to compare to. But then once you have the third, then it's like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
this is the
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah. And I super feel for all the kids that went through that cognitively and like that shared kind of trauma that I know we had as parents and adults. I can't imagine what that's like for kids. I hope that enough time has passed and the kids maybe, I think kids are really resilient, but my heart really goes out to parents of kids your age who had to explain that and deal with that and manage that and virtual school and like all the challenges that comes along with that.
Yeah, and you're right. They're pretty resilient. I think by now it's kind of just a memory in the past, but I think in terms of like their learning, teachers are still telling me that like they're still trying to catch kids up from the pandemic days because they feel like
Wow.
the learning was not as great as it would have been because the first half everyone's still getting used to it, figuring out how to use their computer, how to mute the kids, how to get into, routine, but then even after they got into routine, it was still you still couldn't teach as well as in person. At least that's what
Yeah.
I've heard. And so a lot of times they're still kind of catching up to some of that.
That is wild. Yeah. I mean, 4 years later, that's got to be really tough. My heart really goes out to educators dealing with that dynamic still, it sounds like.
Definitely. The educators, they're amazing.
Yeah.
So, can you tell me a little bit about your parental leave for your different kids?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, my boss actually hired me when I was 5 months pregnant. I was working contract for him, and he knew I was pregnant, and he hired me anyway. And I just felt like that was such a testament to his character. I was so moved by that. He didn't have to. He did. He gave me a parental leave paid, which was for such a small company that I worked for. I was just forever grateful for that. And he really set the bar high for how to treat your employees. So that was an amazing experience. And I have gone on to have 3 children while working for that team. And he wanted us to have a third. He was like, you should have a third kid. So, whenever things are tough at home and I'm like, why did we do this? I'm like, well, Craig said we should. So. He has 3, so it made sense. But yeah, no, I am really grateful to have had that experience and to have the flexibility of working remotely, and it allowed me to like jump in during my parental leave if I needed to keep things going without feeling stressed or like I had to come back earlier than I needed to. So it's been a great experience, and it's one that I would love to offer anybody. On my team. My team is a team of contractors, and so I can't offer them an official paid leave, but working around people's life changes and caregiving responsibilities is something that we try really hard to do and to support each other in that. I had our second baby on our team, and I've got a third person having a baby this spring. And then I've got, somebody who was knocked out from the Hurricane Helene. And so we all jumped in to help each other out. So we try to work together as a team and really help each other as much as we can.
It sounds like a really, really nice and supportive environment. And that's so important, because
Yes. Yeah.
even people without kids, like there's a lot going on in just life, and so just
Yeah.
having that flexibility is really, really important.
Yeah, and just having each other's backs too. Like I feel like I work with such wonderful, supportive people and I'm really grateful for that, but it's not always a shared experience. And I think that our generation is really flipping the script on what it means to be an involved parent and what the gender assumptions are around that. And my husband is like such an amazing, I always say we're 60-60 because we both do more than half. So it's like a 60-60 relationship. But, just talking with sometimes people who are like, oh yeah, they're of a older generation. They're like, oh, I remember having young kids. My wife was so tired.
Right.
And I'm like, now hold on a second.
Yeah.
We're all doing this together, guys. There's no, like, I am not sacrificing, sleep all night. Like, my husband is an equal partner in this. We take turns, we have systems. So, yeah, I mean, I think that it's really up to us to change those dialogues around who's responsible. And I remember reading, there's a study done, and I think it was maybe Finland, about parental leave that was totally equal. It was a year paid parental leave for both parents. And I think it may have been inclusive of adoption, which a lot of tech companies are these days, but this was a national policy. And what they found was that men weren't taking their parental leave because it was culturally supported for them to come back to work early. And so they started mandating it and then tracking what the impact was when men were required to take that leave. And so I think the idea is that policy reflects culture, but we also have to drive culture as well as policy to be able to say, this is equal responsibility of all the parents involved. Sometimes that means it's a single parent and they don't have another person to help them. But, in a 2-parent household, everybody's all hands on deck, and that ebbs and flows. Brene Brown says sometimes you walk in the door and you say, I'm an 8 out of 10 today, or I'm a 2 out of 10. And you kind of have to figure out who can allocate energy to being lead parent or making dinner that night or whatever it is. But it's a partnership. It's an ebb and flow ultimately. That's kind of how I think of it.
Yeah. Normalize having both parents be the
Yeah,
parent,
absolutely.
right? There shouldn't just be
Yeah.
the parent.
Exactly. And that's, I love seeing that in my business. Some of the most successful client relationships I've seen have been the ones where one parent comes to us with a need and then they end up bringing their spouse with them. And I am actually very proud of the fact that you would think we would serve exclusively or primarily women in our business. And we have a lot of male clients. And that's something that I'm very proud of because we've been able to flip that script around who's responsible for the mental load. And so sometimes it is somebody that comes in and they say, oh, well, my wife really needs the help. It's a husband who says, my wife really needs the help. And we're like, okay, well, you can bring your wife into this relationship where we're all working together. And then it is really a team. Or sometimes it's the wife saying, oh, I don't know, that's his responsibility. I'm like, get him over here. Like, come on, bring him into the fold. Let's all work on this together. And then the husbands really see that shift too, and we're able to support them with their duties as well. So I love that we're able to change the conversation about who's responsible for those things. And it's not just an assumption, because especially working in tech, like it can be really stressful. It can be long hours. And then to come home and feel like you have another job on top of that to manage your home, it's a lot.
Yeah, definitely. I can see how that can be helpful for both sides, and not having that expectation of like, they'll take care of it. It's like, no,
Yeah.
how do we
Yeah.
both help take care of that?
Yeah, exactly. Like sometimes when I'm in a meeting, because I'm a project manager, people will be like, oh, someone should do that. I'm like, me, that's me. Someone is me. I'll make sure it happens.
Right, right. And so it's like, how do we make it so that somebody else, the partner, also helps with those things, right? And I love that you're making that possible for parents.
Yeah.
So, how is it going back to work after your parental leave?
Let's see. I mean, it was different every time, right? It's different eras, like between COVID and then, I lived in Virginia for the first two. Then we moved to Florida last, or 2 years ago, I guess. So it's just really different both times. I feel like I did step away, but I was also a little bit involved, when I needed to be as far as like my day job goes. With the business, I was still involved every day. Actually, a client called me when I was like literally in my hospital recovery room and I didn't recognize the number. I thought it was the hospital, but like she had a question. She needed to call me. So of course I was going to pick up. But I mean, I think it's just balancing your identity changing as a parent and realizing like you just need to be as present as you can when you're in those really sensitive moments. And especially with your first, there's nothing like the intimacy that comes with, this first few weeks of your baby and the transition to becoming a parent. It's like such a special time. And I didn't want to lose that, especially with my first one. It was just so tender. And for us with lockdown, it was just like, it was just my little family. It was just me and my husband and our first baby, just going for walks and working in the garden. And like, it just felt like really quiet. It felt really quiet and really intimate. And then I think with the other kids, well, obviously it's louder now because I have more children, but the world keeps turning, you know. Like I brought the third one home and we're like, oh yeah, we have two others. We have to keep going still.
Right. And I'd imagine also with the lockdown, it's like you actually get to spend more time with family, more family time. And like you said, those first moments, those were so precious and they hit those milestones
Yeah.
so quickly. So it's like you look away and already they're crawling, right?
Yeah. What's that thing? It's like the days are long, but the years are short. And it's like, I can't believe, I was talking to my husband yesterday, actually. Like, I think our transition as humans is so accelerated at certain points in our life. And I think it's like the first 4 years of your life, you went from baby to toddler. And as parents, the first 4 years, going from not parent to parent of a 4 year old, it's a whirlwind, you know, you change a lot. Like you change everything about who you are. And I think it's easy for people, especially women, to lose themselves in that identity and to realize that you've got to retain something that's beyond just work and beyond just parenting, something for yourself, whether that's, you know, a hobby, a friend group, a passion project, a personal goal, like whatever it is. You have to retain that sense of identity because otherwise you'll just give it all away and then, you know, you have nothing left for yourself. So that's something that I've been working really hard on the last like 2 years, I would say, is making sure that I have my own, you know, my own place to focus and feel like I am able to fill my own cup, you know, so that I can be present for others in my life.
Yeah. What have you done to get there? I mean, I think it's a journey we're all working through and it's probably
Yeah.
different for everyone, but I'm just curious kind of for you, what are some steps that you took to get to where you are?
So I think for me, after the first kid, it was definitely like finding exercise and working out for the first time in my life regularly. So I had a remote workout partner. We would like share what workout we were going to do every day together, even though it was cute because it was COVID, you know. And then, you know, I started running and I got a running partner and I was training for a half marathon, which I ended up not doing because we moved out of state and I didn't want to train for a half marathon in the middle of Florida summer. But, you know, really falling in love with working out and with running was really helpful. And then last year, I set the goal. I wanted to read, I don't remember, I think I said 20 books. I read 20, like 25 books last year, all nonfiction, personal development. And then this year, last time I checked, I think I'm up to 27 for this year. And I just like, I read a lot of audiobooks. It's really easy for me. Like I'm walking the dog, I read 15 minutes. I'm driving to school pickup, I read 10 minutes. And so when you chip away, you build that into your day. I just found it was really easy to just pick it up instead of social media. You know, you just pick up your audiobook and you can go on this little micro self-discovery journey, you know, 10-minute increments, but it gets the job done. You know, like sometimes we don't have like luxurious long evenings of reading on the
Right.
couch or whatever. Yeah, you got to take it where you can. So this year I set the goal of focusing on creativity and being a better listener. So I spent a lot of time like reading books about listening and watching TED Talks and then figuring out how to cultivate my creativity because I've never really considered myself a creative person. And it was around July that I realized, oh wait, I've been creative this whole time. It's just looked a little different than like visual art. I always thought creativity was like painting or making music or whatever it may be, which doesn't really come naturally to me. But once I realized that starting and running a podcast is a form of creativity and learning how to produce that and creating social media graphics and learning how to use the tools for that, running a business, building a team, creating something out of nothing, like I have done with this podcast, right? It went from nothing to idea to reality and conception. That is a creative process. It may not look like painting or dancing or whatever, but once I realized that, I realized, oh, I have been filling my cup all this time. I need to not beat myself up because it looks like something different. So I'm trying to figure out what next year is going to be. I think next year might actually be painting and maybe learning another language. But I don't know, I think it's fun to like set goals for yourself and set focuses for yourself to really like channel your energy towards.
Yeah, that's so cool. But it also sounds like part of it is also this mindset shift of like, wait a minute, like taking a step back and viewing yourself, like, wait a minute, I have been doing this and not
Yeah.
selling yourself short on some of those things as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Steve Jobs says you can only connect the dots retrospectively, right? He said that in his commencement speech. And sometimes I think when you like look back, you can see those themes and you can see those patterns. And it gives you a little bit more revelation about what your next step might be because you're continuing on this path. Or sometimes you're taking a left turn, like you help your clients with seeing a new chapter that might be unfolding for them.
Definitely. I think, sometimes in conversations we'll be talking and it's like, wait a minute, hold on, I hear the words you're saying. And then when I repeat it back to them, they're like, oh, wait a minute, there is that thing that I could be doing. And,
Yes.
that's so powerful.
Yeah, one of my favorite authors, John Acuff, he said that when people find their passion, it's usually less about finding it and reconnecting with it because it was always there. They just had to realize that it had always been a part of their life. They just needed to pick it up again or give themselves permission to lean into it more wholeheartedly.
Definitely. And hearing you talk, I'm like inspired. I'm like, I want to go read all these audiobooks now. Because
Yeah.
that's one of my biggest things. Like, I can't sit down and just read a
Yeah.
book, but then it's so much easier to listen and consume. And that's what I was thinking about podcasts and stuff,
Yep.
because it's just so much easier when you're, like you said, cooking, picking up the kids, walking the dog, anytime.
Oh my God. Yeah. And I listen to so many podcasts too because it's like you get these bite sized nuggets. A book can be a commitment. A good audiobook is like 8, 12 hours long. But to be able to get end to end, a conversation with somebody like on your podcast or a topic that's covered, I appreciate the podcast forum a lot for sure. But I can send you my list of books to recommend if you're interested in that.
Yeah, that would be really cool. So, with your kids, at such young ages, what do you do for childcare?
Yeah, so my oldest two are at a Montessori school, and then my youngest is at a daycare. So my first two, we kept them home for the first year, and then my youngest, we just have him go to school part time. And we wanted to have as much time with all of our kids when they were so little, But at a certain point, I think every parent realizes that they need something more than what you can provide them at home. And so even when we have them with a nanny, we realize that they need that socialization and they need to be exposed to more complex concepts. And so the first day we sent my older son to Montessori, he had gone to a daycare, but it wasn't curriculum based. We sent him to Montessori and he came home and he knew how to write his name. And we were like, oh my God, like he needed this. He needed to learn. He needed to be challenged. And so I've been, really grateful for Montessori. My neighbor introduced me to it. She ran a Montessori school when I lived in Virginia. I'd never heard of it before. She introduced us to the concept and we've become really big fans, just seeing how much it's benefited both of my older kids. Like they're such different personalities, but they've both really, really grown from the experience. And so we're on the edge right now. We've got kindergarten next year. And so we've got to figure out what we're doing for kindergarten and what that's going to look like. But having a strong foundation in Montessori, I think is really helpful.
Yeah. So, is it hard to get them signed up for preschool daycare over there? Because I know you just moved, so you probably just went through this process.
Oh my God. Yeah, girl, it's crazy. I mean, there's just like, I could talk all day about what a crisis we're in this country, but the lack of good childcare options. But when you get to the, K through 12 era, the conversation totally shifts because it's all about what schools are available, what schools are the best fit. So yeah, we moved here 2 years ago. And in our particular area in Florida, we have school choice. And so basically there's a lot of charter and magnet schools that are available to opt into if you don't want to go to your zoned school, but it's a lottery. It's a true lottery. Some of them, I think, maybe are invitation based, but the ones that my children would qualify for are all lottery based. So it's like this scramble. You go and you tour all the schools and then you figure out how close is it to my house? Does it have free or reduced lunch? Does it have aftercare? Does it have Spanish? Does it have music? Does it have arts? Whatever it may be. And they're all themed. So we've got the art and music one. We've got the STEM one. We've got one that's like more well-rounded. We've got some that are hyper-focused. So I actually developed a spreadsheet to track this decision because we toured I think we looked at over 20 schools and we toured at least a dozen of them. And some of them we toured multiple times because we wanted to get the full experience. And we still haven't decided, because we have to put our name in for the lottery. We don't find out until early February. And that's a challenge I know so many parents are navigating this time of year. So I built this spreadsheet. It's for sale on our Etsy shop. You can use it for daycares as well. It's just so much information. And if you live in a place that has school choice, like I know in New York City, this is a pain point for some of our clients. We've helped them navigate the same thing. You just have so much information flying at you. And it's also it's a very intense emotional experience to think, is my child going to be shaped by this curriculum? Am I making the right choice by sending them to this school versus another school? What are the implications for, their experience, but also the family's experience? Are we going to be spending a ton of time in the car? Are we going to be, really breaking the bank with tuition? Are we going to be able to have access to busing? Like, is my work schedule flexible enough to be able to pick them up so they don't have to do aftercare? It's just a lot of decisions to make at this age. I'm looking forward to getting on the other side of it because once we get the first kid in the school, the other ones will follow. But it's just a time of very high intensity as far as making that decision.
Yeah. So you said it's lottery based, but then siblings, do they just go
Yes.
in if I see?
Yeah, so the siblings get in. But then, if you're going private, that's not always the case. It's not guaranteed for siblings. They still have to interview. I'm like, oh my God, that's so
Oh,
stressful. I can't do this again.
yeah. And they're so little. They got to interview at such a young age. There's so much pressure.
It seems so unfair to make them interview. I mean, the schools that we
Right.
looked at the interview, it's not like they're grilling them in a room, but I mean,
Right.
I hear these stories about parents in New York City. They hire like preschool interview coaches that basically like coach your kid into how to, oh my God. Yeah. I mean, it's really intense, and it brings up a lot of questions about like social stratification and privilege and access to good education. But in our area, the public schools are all charter. So you just put your name in basically. And then it's a whole strategy. You pick your first choice, your second choice. And then, people drop out and you might get their spot. And like, oh, it's a whole
Oh my
thing.
gosh.
Yeah.
That's so much.
Mm-hmm.
So, since becoming a parent, how has your work life changed?
Oh my God, everything about it. Everything about my work life has changed because everything about me's changed, right? You can probably relate to this experience. Like, it's one of the biggest shifts you can go through as far as your identity, but also your day to day. So, I think becoming a parent, specifically of toddlers, has made me the project manager that I am, like at my core. When I became a parent of babies, right? I had two babies back to back, they're 15 months apart. I learned how to be really efficient with my time and to make sure that I was, checked out as much as I could between, peak parenting hours, like the 5 to 8 window. I often work after they go to bed, but to be fully present in the time when I'm with them really helped me draw strong work-life boundaries. It really helped my anxiety at work because I was able to contain work to work, and I was able to say, okay, I'm going to give this my full focus while I have childcare, and then I'm going to give myself the opportunity to unplug for a couple of hours to be present. And that was really helpful to me. Sometimes it's messy. It's not always perfect. And so I have to take meetings during dinner time. My husband drives the kids and it just happens that way. But becoming a parent of toddlers has been everything because toddlers thrive on system, routine, consistency. And so my entire life is systemized. Like everything we do, like it's well orchestrated. Everybody knows where they need to be at any given time. There's a schedule. With 3 kids, we just can't really afford to have a lot of chaos at home. So creating those systems, communicating them, building them with my husband, then we use Asana, which is a project management tool for like our to-do list, and working with our house manager. That's made a huge difference. Being able to plan things out in advance, duplicate from year to year, like that gift tracker. But I think the biggest thing for me as specifically a woman working in the tech field and my day job, it is so easy for me to stick up for myself. And it is so easy for me to give feedback in a way that's palatable because I'm really used to doing it with my children. And so I can easily say to a colleague twice my age, was that kind? Is that appropriate for this conversation? It's very easy for me to like feel like I can facilitate a conversation quickly because I'm used to directing in my own family. Like, this is where we need to be. These are the things that need to happen before we can go to the park. It's the same thing with a meeting. Here's all the things we need to discuss. Let's pull together an agenda. This is what we need to cover. What else needs to be covered? And I've gotten this feedback specifically from older women who said, wow, you really put that guy in his place in a way that he left laughing, right? Like in the South, they say, she can send somebody to hell and so nicely they'll enjoy the trip. Like that's kind of the brand I built. And these people will say to me, like, I can't believe, like I had this one guy who kept confusing me with another woman on our team. In the middle of the meeting, in front of everybody, I was like, hey, I know that we're both wonderful people and we're both extremely competent, but just because we're women doesn't mean we're interchangeable. It's like, she's the subject matter expert, I'm a project manager. And he laughed and we all laughed. We had a great time. He apologized and we had a great relationship from there. But it was just like that way of being kind of playful, bringing humor, bringing light. One thing with toddlers is you have to gamify. So like working with clients who have ADHD, like translating those things into how can we keep this engaging? How can we keep the vibe upbeat so that people want to be involved? I'm not just like giving negative feedback all the time. You're also keeping it lighthearted and making it a place people want to be. So yeah, becoming a parent has definitely shaped the project manager that I am today, without a doubt. And I'm curious if other people have had that experience as well.
No, I love that. A lot of times it's hard to give that feedback, especially in the moment, but you need to give it in the moment. So how do you give that without, you still had the same effect, right? But then it didn't burn any bridges, nobody
Yeah.
stomped off, because something like that could go really wrong if presented in the wrong way.
Yes.
The way you
Yeah.
said it was really, really good.
Yeah, just being direct, keeping it playful and upbeat. Nobody's, trying to make it personal, make it silly. But yeah, I think it can go sideways really quick. On my day job, I'm often the only woman in the room. I'm often 30 years younger than all of my colleagues or the people that I'm talking with. And so that gave me the confidence to be able to really present and show up and be able to implement some of those things that I do at home, which is just, making sure the trains are moving on time,
I definitely see there's so many parallels, like just multitasking alone. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
you know this with 2 young kids. Like sometimes you're holding 2
Yeah.
kids, one on each arm. And so it's like, how do I hold one on each arm and still
Oh
do
my
the
God,
thing I need to
yes.
do, right? Same thing with work. How am I juggling like this meeting with this project, with this, and it's
Yeah.
very, very similar, right? And I also feel like with kids, I will go and protect my kids no matter what. I will go stick up for them. And then when I have
Yep.
a team, I kind of, it's an extension of that where I'm like, okay, if you're going to mess with me, fine, but you're going to
Yeah.
mess with my team, no.
100%.
So it's kind of that nurturing
Yeah, that
aspect.
instinct. Yeah, totally. You're building a team. You got to keep it together, protect it at all odds, for sure. I love that.
So what has been your biggest struggle or challenge being a parent in tech?
Oh, geez. I don't know. That's a good question. I would say navigating the stigma of being a working mom, I think has been a challenge that I've had to just think about over the years and face. I think there is a perception that you're distracted, that you have other priorities, that you're abandoning your children, you're letting other people raise them. Like, my kids were the first kids to go to daycare in like 3 generations on me and my husband's side,
Wow.
both sides of our families. Yeah, I was the first like woman to not stay home in some capacity and raise my kids without the help of outside school or nannies or anything. And I'm really actually proud of that because I also feel like it emboldened me to feel more empowered about my money, my identity, my career, and to not feel like pushed into this role of being a stay-at-home parent, which I didn't want. And I like my work, I like my job, I like my business, I like what it's allowed me to do and grow as a person. And I love my kids just the same as if I had stayed home with them, maybe more because I'm not burned out on them. You know what I mean? And like the story I told earlier about my son, like learning how to write his name when he started school, it really validated for me that I'm not a trained teacher. They need socialization from other kids. It's a better balance for all of us. It doesn't mean there aren't hard days where I don't want to send my kids and I'd rather call in sick and keep them home and just be able to have all the playtime with them. But yeah, I think pushing back on the stigma that working parents are distracted, working moms specifically are distracted, or that they're abandoning their kids, and like learning how to kind of live in both identities and hopefully with some grace. That's my goal, at least. They say women are expected to work like they aren't parents and parent like they don't need a job or whatever. And it's like, you gotta cut us some slack here. We can't please all people. We have to make the decisions that are right for us and our family. And I feel pretty good about those decisions. And it really helps having such a supportive partner who he has gone from working to not working and working. Like it's an ebb and flow, it's a 60-60 right there.
And it's really what works for your family too. And I think
Yeah.
it goes back to what you said earlier around having your own identity. It's like you don't want to
Yeah.
give up your identity just because now you're a mom, right? You want to be a mom
Yeah.
and do the things that you love to do the things that fill your cup, right? Because if
Yeah.
you were to stay home and that doesn't fill your cup, that's not going to be a good experience for anyone. So it's like what works
Yeah.
for you, what works for your happiness and your family.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always say work should facilitate us living our best lives, not impede it. And so, when I bring people into my team with my business, I always want to make sure that they're working for me because it helps them achieve their dream. And their dream might be staying home with their child. And their dream might be starting their own business, doing something unrelated. And so I really want to know that like them working for me helps them facilitate their purpose and their passion, because otherwise they're just kind of punching in and they're doing it to do it. And it's like, that's not what life's about, man. Every morning when I wake up and my feet hit the floor, I know that what I do in my job is helping other people, but it's also helping me live my best life. And so I'm really grateful for that. And I want to share that with others, that perspective.
I love that. I love that so much. I'm like, I wish there were more people like that, that have the same mindset as you and want to give this to everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It doesn't have to be either or. It shouldn't be either or. That's no fun. All work and no play. That's not how it should be.
So, what do you see as the biggest benefit being a parent in tech?
I think that being able to manage priorities, being able to change and be flexible on the fly, like especially as a project manager, conditions are always changing. Same with being a parent. I think being able to retain the big picture, like when your kid makes a big mess at the dinner table, it's not as big a deal when you think about it big picture and you get some perspective on it. Same thing when you're driving a project and something breaks or there's a bug you just can't get fixed. It's like, okay, let's continue driving forward. Let's not lose sight of the goal and where we're going in the path. And let's not ruin a team dynamic over a small mistake that's, totally understandable and fixable ultimately.
Yeah, that definitely resonates with me, especially, with young kids. So, what are some things you struggle with, or what are some challenges you're seeing at your kids' current ages of 4, 3, and 6 months?
Oh man, I think like they're at the phase where they want independence and they're able to give themselves more independence, but not always to the fullest of their ability. Like the 2 year old range is always where they're saying, no, I can do it. I don't need help, but they really kind of can't. So you have to set them up. And so now, like this morning, my 4 year old was like, I want to get myself dressed for school. I'm like, great, absolutely. It's super developmentally appropriate. Please go get yourself dressed. And it took like 20 minutes. And I don't want to ruin his drive to be independent, but I also want to keep him in track and keep him, moving forward. So I think that, I don't know, I love the toddler years though. Like they're just so sweet and fun. I've been really grateful so far. And then, the baby just hit 6 months. And so he's sleeping a little better, not fully through the night, but he's sleeping a little better. And like, he's just in the like laughing phase and the like
Yeah.
interactive phase. I love that. Yeah. They start like really coming into themselves. We took him to the beach yesterday and it was the first time he has been able to like play in the sand. He was always too little.
So, seeing him experience that for the first time and really know like that
Yeah.
feeling, that's amazing.
Yes. Yeah, they say your first teaches you how to parent, your second teaches you to be patient, and your third teaches you to savor it. And I definitely feel that.
Yeah, I see that too. And I think I draw some parallels, between when they were younger versus older because, now my kids, even the teenager, it's like, oh, yeah, they think they know everything. They always think they know more than
Oh,
we know. So that just persists as they get older.
yeah. I mean, they say that like toddlerdom and teenager are really similar. They have the surge in hormones and the need for independence. So, like, I'm here for it. I
Yeah.
guess we have to do it all over again when they get a little older. But that's okay. It's part of the evolution. I mean, Lord knows we were all there at one point.
Right, right. Because I remember when they were toddlers, it was like they would take a bite of banana and they would be mad. Like now my banana is not full anymore, you
Oh,
know?
yeah.
And so it's like just the littlest things would make them mad. Same thing with teenagers, maybe like, oh, the shirt I want is in the hamper. And then they're upset the rest of the day.
Oh God, the shirt being in the hamper, that's like a daily drama in my house. Because my kids are like kind of at the age where they can share clothes and it's like, oh well they wore it yesterday, but now it's dirty and I can't, or like, oh my God. But they're not old enough to tell them to do their own laundry. At least your teenagers can like do their own laundry, right?
Yeah, it's like, oh, you want your PE clothes for school? Well,
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
it shouldn't be in your bag.
exactly. That's on you.
But they also don't want to wear something the other sibling
Oh,
wore
yeah,
too. That
yeah.
still
Okay,
happens too.
gotcha.
My youngest, I feel like he's less picky. I think he's still at the age where he's like, it's fine, whatever. But my second one's like,
Oh
no,
my God.
no. He wore that every day. No. I'm not wearing that. Oh, he just tried it on? No. You need
They
to
have
wash it
preference,
first.
and like you have to remember if it's important to them, it is legitimately important to them. And like I read this thing one day that was like, if your kid says that if they're acting like this is the worst thing that's ever happened to them, like it was specifically toddlers, if they're acting like this is the worst thing that's ever happened to them, it's probably like is the worst thing that's ever happened to them. I'm like, oh God, that gives me so much sympathy for them, like that sucks. That's hard. And you have to remember that as a parent because sometimes you're just like, oh, like I can't deal with this. But yeah, if it's important to them, it's usually actually important.
Yeah, because their issues are contained within what they see,
Exactly.
right? So, like, that is the biggest issue for them
Mm-hmm.
right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, for us, it's like, how do we help them solve that? But also see that, hey, there's other bigger issues
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
exactly.
So, the last question I like to ask is what's something you would tell someone who's planning to have kids or something you wish you knew before you became a parent?
Oh my gosh, pick a good partner. That's everything. I just feel like it was dumb luck that I stumbled into such an amazing partnership. When I was 23, I was not fully developmental. My prefrontal cortex was not fully developed. I was not making decisions with a full brain. I wasn't thinking, oh, is this person going to be an equal parent? Are they going to, be a true partner in this? Like, I just fell in love. And then when we had kids 8 years later, I was like, oh, thank God. Right? Because like I see so
Yeah.
many other people go through that where they marry this wonderful person who ends up like not being the most equal partner or not being the most present parent or whatever. So I feel like, yeah, choose well with who you marry or procreate with is like a major one. You're gonna have to look at their offspring and you're gonna have to work with them, in whatever capacity it may be. Like partnered or unpartnered. So that's something I'm really grateful for that I would definitely ask younger me to consider a little more intentionally. It worked out super well for me, but that's not always the case. And one thing that I think about is like, what's the culture at your workplace around being a parent? And when I have been in the past job hunting, I thought to myself, kind of like we were talking about earlier, like maybe there's a policy around parental leave, but it's not culturally supported. Maybe they love the idea of you getting pregnant, having a baby, but they don't actually know what that entails because they don't have children. No one on the team has children. And so they have no idea what that means. So when you say, oh, I've got a hard stop because I got to pick up my kid, they're going to be like, that's unacceptable behavior, even though you're logging back into work after you get home or after bedtime or whatever. So I think, choosing a team that's super aware of that dynamic is really helpful. Preferably people who have kids or culturally supported to have kids makes a really big difference as far as the reality of how supportive that environment can be. Another thing I would say is there's so much demand on our time and mental energy to perform at work and as a parent. Reserving a little bit of time for yourself to be able to grow is something that can often get put on the back burner. But I just came to this kind of realization recently. I read this book called Beginners by Tom Vanderbilt. And it was one of many moments, but this was a particularly potent one where he talks about, I think it's called like the lifelong pursuit of adult learning or something. And he's basically just like, you have to be a beginner to learn anything. And so if you want to get good at something, you have to be okay with being bad at it at first. Otherwise, you'll never get good at it. I think previously thought that people were like naturally good at things. People were like, oh, I'm naturally good at being an artist. I'm naturally a scientist. I'm naturally engineering minded. And it's like, yeah, that's true. But also you can learn to be most things. You can learn to do most things. And so I kind of was scared to try something new, like going into the private sector, like starting in tech. I was scared. I was intimidated. And my MBA gave me like a false sense of confidence to be able to apply for jobs and work with clients that were in the tech sphere. And I realized it really wasn't about my MBA. It was about me giving myself permission to step into the room and stay. And they don't have a seat for you. You build a chair, right? It's to sit at the table. And so I think like giving yourself permission to grow and change and learn new things. We do it as parents. Why wouldn't we do it at work as well? You go from 0 to 60 not being a parent, and then all of a sudden they hand you a baby or a child if you're adopting, and you're like, oh my God, I gotta figure this out. Like you can do that in other aspects of your life as well. And I think that that's been really informative for me. So don't put your life on hold just because you're becoming a parent. If you're in a demanding tech role and you're a parent, it can be hard to find that in-between space, but maybe there's room to grow at your job. Maybe there's room to grow into a different role or new challenges or new projects that you can take on, and retaining that sense of self. It makes you a better parent. It really makes you able to show up for yourself and your family.
Definitely. What are some things that you do when you're looking at a new work opportunity or something? What are some things you do to make sure that they will support a family life, or the best you can do to make sure before joining?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think, a while ago I put together a list of questions. I'll have to dig it up. A list of questions to ask when you're looking at joining a new team, as an applicant, when you're interviewing the team, to really kind of understand what their culture looks like. And it's hard to know based on the way that they answer questions, right? It's really proofs in the pudding. It's never enough to just say, oh yeah, we're supportive of whatever. I think asking about what policies are in place is important because policies support culture. Asking for specific examples, like who on the team has kids, who on the team leaves to pick their kids up, and what does the schedule look like? What's your flexibility around end of the day work, like as far as working in the evenings? Most times teams don't really care. Like if I log in after bedtime and I can crank some stuff out, I like that because it gets me ahead for the next day. I have aftercare, but some people have to leave to pick up their kids at 2:30, and that can be disruptive. So figuring out, is this going to jive with the team that I'm joining? And then really understanding, are they here for the success of their team, or are they just here for the bottom dollar, and for the bottom line? What's the goal? Is it also to support people that they work with and to create a supportive culture? I think that when we support everybody on our team, the rising tide lifts all boats. I think it's better for everybody. It's better for productivity. It's better for retention, which is expensive, having employee turnover. It's better to have that supportive culture. And it also increases satisfaction day to day. Like people are going to perform better if they're feeling satisfied, if they're feeling welcomed. So I feel like creating a supportive environment, I try to do that with every team that I work with. I know that there's always room for improvement, but especially when you in these businesses that are growing really fast and they're just kind of build, and they're not thinking about culture, that's where it can really suffer. This expectation that people work these really long hours for the greater good of the business at the expense of their own well-being. It's not going to sustain.
Yeah, I agree with all of those things. And also, what you said about kind of finding a partner that is supportive as well. That's really important. And I think back to me too, when I was young, it's like, you don't think about those things. I didn't even think about like, are you going to wake up in the middle of the night to feed the baby? Like,
Yep.
are you going to be, are you going to watch the kid? Just none of those things
Yep.
cross my mind.
Yeah.
But now when I talk to younger people, I'm just like, hey, it doesn't hurt to talk about some of those things,
Yes.
because it might feel a little scary, but if you're really thinking about the future with this person, it definitely is something to at least bring up.
Yeah, absolutely. And like also look at who their role models are in their life, because I think unknowingly we perpetuate so much of the way that we were raised when we become parents. And so asking your potential partner what their relationship is like with their family and how things are done in their family, we have to break generational cycles. It's kind of up to us to do that. And so saying that you're not going to be an involved parent because your father wasn't is not a good enough excuse. Like that's not a reason to be checked out because that's what you were modeled at home. And I see that perpetuated in our generation. It really breaks my heart because I feel like, there's a whole generation of people that are missing out on that experience of being fully involved just because they're modeling the way that they were raised. So I asked my husband, I'm like, where did you learn this? Where did you learn to be so involved and so dialed in? It just wasn't necessarily something that was modeled for our parents' generation. I think it's up to us to like forge new pathways. And I hope that our kids see that. Like, oh my God, my kids they're in this like funny phase where they're like, oh, this thing is hard. Let me ask dad for help. I'm like, absolutely not. I will get the tools. I will blow out my back moving this thing I shouldn't be moving. Because I'm not as strong as my husband. I don't want my kids to know that. Like, I'm like, absolutely not. We're trying to break the gender norms here.
Yeah. Yeah, good on you for doing
it. Doesn't always work out. Sometimes I have to just pass the screwdriver.
Yeah. Like when we'll order a thing, right? Like a desk or something. I'm like, I could put that together.
Yeah.
And they're like, why don't you just have dad do it? I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll take me double the time because I haven't done it before, but he hasn't done it before either. So
good on you, girl. I like that. You got to model it.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you, Hannah. Thank you so much for chatting with us today and sharing all these really, really helpful tips.
Yeah,
I know I, for one, have taken a lot of notes. So thank you so much for all of that.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for creating the space for parents to talk about these things candidly. I think it's so important that we share our stories and like lift the veil. I think especially in tech, there's so much the norm of like being the perfect employee. And so we have to change the narrative around supporting the whole person, the whole team. And it takes all kinds. And I just really appreciate that like you having these conversations with parents is part of changing that script, and I think that's really important. And it's important work what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for your business as well. I'll definitely be linking that into the show notes. And it's really, really awesome what you're doing, really helping parents, because I think a lot of times we don't know what help we need.
Yeah.
And so to have it there, it's like you realize, oh, wait a minute. I actually have all these things that are just sitting on the back burner.
Yeah.
So I think that's really, really helpful. So I wish you the best of luck
Thanks.
in your business. And I hope you can help lots and lots of parents out there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you. And have a great Thanksgiving.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Parenthood Bites. We hope you found our episode informative and entertaining. If you're a parent in the tech world or know someone who is, we'd love to hear from you. Please reach out to us at chow@parenthoodbites.co, and we'll be thrilled to add your experiences to our interviews. That's chow, CHIAO, @parenthoodbites.co. And to our potential sponsors out there, if you're a business or know of one that would like to support and partner with our podcast, please don't hesitate to get in touch. You can also reach us at chow@parenthoodbites.co. Thank you once again for tuning in, and we wish you a fantastic rest of your week. Until next time, take care and stay curious.